I never believed in ghosts. I believed in records, in archives, in proof. My name is Dr. Evelyn Ross, historian for the University of Denver, and until last fall, my world was made of ink, paper, and evidence. But there are some stories you don't find in books. They find you. Hollow Creek was a mining town abandoned in 1897 after a series of disappearances and fires that wiped out half its population. Official reports blamed mercury poisoning and structural collapse. But local whispers spoke of something else, the night choir, they called it. A chorus of voices that sang beneath the ground when the fog was thickest. I'd been studying small-town collapses for a lecture series, and Hollow Creek came up again and again, referenced in old newspapers, diaries, even a sermon from 1902 warning never to dig where the choir sleeps. So I went there. The town wasn't on any modern map, just coordinates buried in an old railway ledger. The deeper I drove into the mountains, the narrower the road became, just gravel and skeletal trees that seemed to lean closer with every mile. By the time I reached the wooden sign that read Hollow Creek, founded 1852, the sun was already slipping behind the hills. The town was eerily intact, storefronts leaning but still standing, windows shattered but somehow clean of dust. It looked paused, like the people had just stepped out for air 100 years ago and never came back. I set up my recorder and camera near what used to be the saloon. My plan was to spend one night cataloging remains, collecting soil samples, and heading out at dawn. That plan didn't last an hour. The air was strange, not just cold but heavy, almost charged. My flashlight beam would flicker each time I passed a certain alley. At first, I thought it was electrical interference. Then, in my audio playback, I heard it, a low hum under the static. It wasn't wind. It wasn't machinery. It was voices. Dozens of them. Faint, overlapping, singing in what sounded like Latin or maybe Old English hymns. I turned the recorder off, and the humming stopped. Turned it back on, the voices returned. That was my first mistake, assuming I was still the one in control. I followed the sound to the old church at the edge of town. The building leaned against the slope, its steeple cracked but still piercing the sky. The closer I got, the stronger the melody became, that same ghostly choir humming from beneath the floorboards. Inside, pews lay splintered, hymn books frozen mid-page, and on the altar sat something I'll never forget, a row of melted candles still dripping wax, though no flame burned above them. I took out my phone to document it, but the screen flickered, white static and a faint silhouette behind me. When I turned, nothing was there. Then came the whisper. Just one voice, right by my ear. "You're late." Every instinct screamed to leave, but my rational mind, the historian, the skeptic, refused to run. I called out, voice shaking, "Who's there?" No answer. Only the faint rustle of something moving in the upper balcony. I climbed the stairs, each creak echoing like a gunshot in the hollow space. Up there, I found a portrait. Dust-covered, half-burned, depicting a man in a preacher's collar, his eyes wide and ink-black. Beneath it, carved into the frame, Reverend Eli Carter, shepherd of the choir. That name hit me like a jolt. Carter was the same name mentioned in a diary I'd read from 1896, the one that described a preacher who led the town in prayer until the singing began. Suddenly, the humming below deepened, male voices, female voices, merging into a dissonant harmony that rattled the windows. I looked down from the balcony and saw shadows gathering in the pews, faint silhouettes rising out of the air itself. I froze, clutching the railing. The figures were swaying, singing, but their mouths didn't move. They were echoes, trapped sound imitating life. And in the front row, something darker stood among them. Taller, cloaked in shadow, head tilted slightly upward as if listening. Then, it turned toward me. Every candle burst into flame. I bolted down the stairs, the wood groaning beneath me, and sprinted outside. The air hit me like ice. Behind me, the church doors slammed shut on their own. I didn't stop until I reached my car. But when I grabbed the door handle, I saw something that made my breath catch, a handprint on the window. Small, wet, pressed from the inside. That's when I realized the choir didn't just stay in the church. It followed sound. It followed anything that listened. I woke up in my car with the dawn burning through the windshield. For a second, I thought maybe it had all been a dream. The church, the voices, that thing looking up at me. But then I saw the recorder sitting on the passenger seat, still running, battery somehow full. I pressed play. No dream. Every note, every hum, every whisper was there. And buried under all of it, like a whisper inside a whisper, came a voice. Soft. Feminine. Don't leave. He needs you to listen. I shut it off, but that sentence kept replaying in my mind. He needs you to listen. Who was he? Reverend Eli Carter? The rational part of me wanted to pack up and go back to Denver. File it as acoustic interference or hysteria brought on by stress. But historians don't walk away from history, and this town felt like a story no one else had ever finished telling. So I stayed. Daylight made Hollow Creek look almost ordinary, like a set left behind after a movie shoot. I walked down the main street, taking photos, documenting artifacts. But every store I entered had the same strange detail, mirrors either missing or covered. Some with sheets, others with nailed boards. At the general store, I found a ledger open to 1897. The last entry read, "All accounted for except the choir. He says they must keep singing until the earth remembers." I didn't understand what that meant. But when I looked at the next page, I saw something stranger, faint musical notes drawn in the margins. The same pattern repeated 5 times. It was like someone was trying to write down the song I'd heard. I spent hours mapping out the town. Schoolhouse, blacksmith, a row of houses near the river. All abandoned, but each one had that same echo when I spoke, like the walls were answering me a second too late. By noon, the sky had dimmed unnaturally. A low fog rolled in from the forest, swallowing the light until the town turned silver grey. The temperature dropped, fast. I wrapped my jacket tighter and started heading back, until I noticed movement. A child, maybe 8 years old, standing in the middle of the road. Barefoot. Pale. Watching me. I called out, "Hey, are you okay? Where are your parents?" No answer. The child just tilted her head, then lifted her hand and pointed behind me. When I turned around, there was no one there, but every door on the street had opened a few inches, creaking in unison. My pulse was pounding. I stepped back toward my car, but the girl was gone. Only small footprints remained in the dust. Something made me look up to the windows above the saloon. And there, behind the broken glass, were faces. Dozens of them. Men, women, children, all pale, expressionless, staring down like portraits waiting to blink. I raised the recorder again. The hum grew stronger, as if the act of recording fed it. The air shimmered, and suddenly the faces in the window began to move, their mouths opening in perfect unison. They were singing again. A single melody this time, low and hollow, a requiem for something still alive. I stumbled backward and dropped the recorder. The instant it hit the ground, the song stopped. Silence fell over the entire town. Not even the wind moved. That's when the doors began to close. One by one, slamming shut like a heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. And then the church bell rang, just once. I should have run. Instead, I walked toward it. Some part of me thought, if I could just understand what they wanted, maybe I could stop whatever this was. Maybe they weren't evil, maybe they were trapped. Inside the church, the air was warmer. Too warm. The pews were empty now, the candles gone. But on the altar, something new had appeared, a small wooden box, perfectly clean, as if someone had just placed it there. I opened it carefully. Inside lay a human ear, dried and blackened with age, resting on a torn page from a Bible. The verse was from Samuel 3:10, and the Lord came and stood, calling as at other times, "Samuel, Samuel." Then Samuel answered, "Speak, for thy servant heareth." The page wasn't just stained with ink, it was soaked in something red. I dropped the box and stumbled backward. My vision blurred, and in the walls I could see movement. Faces pressed against the wood, mouths opening soundlessly as if still singing from behind the panels. I ran out into the fog, desperate for light. But when I reached my car again, the windshield was covered in those same small, wet handprints. And written in the condensation across the glass were 3 words, "He's still listening." That's when I realized this wasn't about ghosts at all. This was about something still awake, something using the voices of the dead to call me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I parked the car just outside town and watched the fog pulse like a living thing. Every few minutes, I'd hear something, a faint knock, the scrape of footsteps too light to be human. By 4 a.m., my recorder switched itself on. I didn't touch it. Its little red light blinked on its own, and a single voice began to speak through the static. Evelyn Ross. You came to listen. You opened the door. I threw the recorder onto the passenger seat and started the car, but the headlights didn't turn on. Neither did the engine. Just static on the dashboard, whispering in reverse. Then, from the fog, I saw a faint orange glow, the church again. Candlelight flickering in the windows. I don't know why, but I walked back. Maybe I thought if I could face whatever was inside, I could end it. Or maybe, deep down, I already knew this was my fault, that they'd been waiting for me to return. The church doors were open now. The box with the ear was gone, replaced by a stack of journals, tied neatly with a ribbon made of old rosary beads. I untied them, hands shaking, and began to read. They belonged to Reverend Eli Carter. The first entries were sermons, typical fire and brimstone rhetoric. But as the pages went on, his words shifted. He began writing about the voices beneath the ground that sang to him during prayer. How they promised to end the town's suffering if he let them in. He wrote, "They say they were angels once, fallen in silence. But the Lord turned his face away, and they sang themselves back into the earth." Later entries grew frantic, the handwriting jagged, the ink darker. He described burying the town's choir under the church to seal the covenant. Then he confessed that every night since, their song grew louder, demanding he join them in harmony. His last entry stopped mid-sentence, "If I stop listening, that's all." No period. Just that. I flipped through the rest, searching for dates, anything. Then I noticed something horrifying. The paper wasn't normal parchment. It had a texture, soft, almost leathery. When I held it up to the candlelight, I saw pores. Heartbeat spikes, faint crackle of flame, human skin. The journals were bound in human skin. The singing started again, closer this time, directly beneath the floorboards. The boards trembled, dust spilling through the cracks. I could hear words now, not just melody. "Join us." "He's waiting." "Listen." I backed toward the door, but it slammed shut. Something heavy moved in the shadows at the front of the church. The candles bent backward as if pushed by unseen breath. And then I saw him. Reverend Carter. Or what was left of him. A tall figure, face hidden by rotted cloth, skin stretched thin over bones that creaked with every step. His mouth moved, but his voice came from everywhere. Through the walls, through the pews, even through the floor. "You came to finish what I began." He raised one trembling hand, and the air turned thick. My chest constricted, not from fear, but pressure, like invisible hands pushing inward. My recorder turned itself back on, light flashing wildly, and through it came the sound of hundreds of voices, men, women, children, singing my name. "Evelyn! Evelyn! Evelyn!" Their tone was pleading, almost mournful. Carter's shadow stretched across the floor, twisting into dozens of smaller shapes that reached for me. I screamed and swung the recorder at him. The moment it hit the ground, the singing cracked into silence, like glass shattering in my ears. When I opened my eyes, Carter was gone. So was the church. I was standing in the middle of the main street again, the fog thinning. No buildings. No signs of the town at all, just ash. I turned in every direction. Nothing but dirt and distant trees. It was as if Hollow Creek had been erased. My recorder still lay in the dirt beside me, glowing faintly. I picked it up, pressed play. "Now you've heard us." Then, a child's voice, "Now we can listen to you." I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the empty ground where Hollow Creek used to be. My camera was gone. My samples. My car. Even the road had vanished. Just me, the dirt, and the recorder glowing faintly in my hand. I turned in a slow circle, praying for a landmark, anything. But the world was wrong. The air shimmered like heat, even though it was freezing. The trees looked stretched, too tall, their shadows bending in directions the sun didn't go. Then I heard the hum again. Not beneath me this time, inside me. It was in my chest, my throat, vibrating with every breath. I covered my ears, but it didn't stop. It wasn't sound anymore. It was thought. I tried recording again, speaking directly into the mic. "This is Dr. Evelyn Ross," I said, my voice shaking. "I appear to be in, I don't know, a different location than before. I can't find the town. If anyone finds this recording," my voice cut off. On its own. I hadn't stopped talking, but the recorder muted me, like something had silenced me before my words could reach it. Then, through the static, I heard another voice. My own. Repeating the same words, but wrong. The tone was slower, heavier, like someone imitating me. "This is Dr. Evelyn Ross. I appear to be inside him now." I dropped the recorder. When I bent to pick it up, the dirt under my fingers was warm, pulsing faintly, like skin. The realization hit me hard and cold. I wasn't standing in dirt. I was standing on Hollow Creek. The entire town, the streets, the buildings, the people, had been swallowed, folded under the earth like a wound scabbing over. And now, it was alive. The fog rolled back in, thicker this time, swirling with ash and fragments of voices. I could hear prayers, screams, laughter, every echo from the night before, looping endlessly. And then I saw shapes forming in the haze. Dozens. Hundreds. The residents of Hollow Creek, translucent, moving in circles around me like mourners in a ritual. Their eyes were hollow, but their mouths opened in silent song. In the center of them all, the shadow of Reverend Carter rose again. Taller now, vast, its edges flickering like smoke. "You wrote us back into memory, Evelyn," he said, his voice like gravel soaked in honey. "And memory is all a ghost needs to live again." I backed away, shaking my head. "You're not real. You're residue. History." He smiled, or maybe his shadow curved into something like it. "Then why do we remember you?" I looked down, and there, in the dust, were pages scattered around my feet. My handwriting. Field notes. Transcriptions. Only they weren't from last night. They were dated 1897. My heart slammed against my ribs. I picked up one page and read, "Reverend Carter performed final ritual tonight. Choir sealed beneath the church. Witness, Dr. Evelyn Ross." No, that couldn't be. I wasn't alive in 1897. I wasn't, but the next page showed a charcoal sketch. Of me. Standing beside Carter. Holding the same recorder. Carter stepped closer, his voice crawling into my mind like oil. "You didn't come here. You returned." I stumbled backward, tripping over something hard, the edge of stone steps half buried in the soil. I brushed them off. Beneath the dirt, the word sanctum was carved into marble. The ground split with a sound like tearing fabric, revealing stairs leading down. Every instinct said run. But the humming grew sharper, like it was pulling me downward, promising truth. So I descended. The air grew heavy, warm, metallic. The tunnel walls pulsed faintly, veins of light running through the stone. And the deeper I went, the more voices I heard. The choir, whispering fragments of scripture, laughter, sobbing, and one word repeated again and again, "Listen." At the bottom, a cavern opened, vast, circular, filled with faces carved into the rock. Thousands of them, mouths open, eyes hollow. Their features flickered like candlelight, as if alive only when looked at. In the center stood an altar of blackened stone, and upon it, my recorder. Still blinking red. Sound cue, slow rhythmic pulse, like heartbeat syncing with humming. I stepped closer. The air thickened with voices. The stone beneath my boots felt soft, like flesh. "Evelyn," they whispered, in hundreds of overlapping tones. "We sang the world quiet for him once. He sleeps below still, until the listener returns. Until you return." Carter's figure emerged behind the altar, now less man, more shape, a column of smoke and bone, with dozens of mouths forming and collapsing across his surface. "He doesn't need faith," Carter said. "He needs ears." He pointed at me, and all the carved faces turned to face me at once. They began to hum. The vibration hit my bones first, then my teeth. My vision blurred, colors bleeding. I clutched my recorder, desperate, screaming into it, "Stop! You're not real. You're dead." The recorder's screen flickered, then displayed text I didn't type, "Then so are you." The next seconds were chaos. The walls shook. The stone faces opened their mouths wide, and from each came a beam of white light. My body lifted off the ground, weightless, sound pouring into me from all directions. I heard Carter shouting, or maybe praying. The words twisted and broke apart, and then, nothing. I woke up in my apartment. It was daylight. My recorder sat on the desk beside me, covered in dirt. My hands were clean. My notes, all 200 pages, stacked neatly in front of me. For a few minutes, I actually believed I'd dreamt it. Then I hit play. The voice that spoke wasn't mine. It was Carter's. "The choir thanks you, Dr. Ross. The earth remembers again. The door is open." The sound that followed wasn't music or speech. It was breathing. Hundreds of people breathing in perfect rhythm, slowly, endlessly. I threw the recorder across the room, but even then, I could still hear it. Not from the recorder. From the walls. It hasn't stopped since. Every night, the hum gets louder. Sometimes I see faces reflected in the glass when I walk past the windows. And sometimes I wake up standing at my desk, transcribing words I don't remember hearing. The last time I read them back, they said, "When the world stops listening, the choir will sing again." I've sealed the recorder in concrete. I've burned my notes. But I still hear them. Every heartbeat. Every silence between breaths. They are there, waiting for someone else to listen.